Our first PechaKucha speaker is Shauna Sylvester, the woman who first conceived of renewable cities and had the idea that in May 2015 we should invite the world of Vancouver for a global learning forum. Shauna's worn many hats over the years, and she's now the director of the Center for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University, where we're seated tonight, and which is also the home for renewable cities. So Shauna, the floor is yours.
I'm trying to do this without my notes. My job tonight is to welcome you to Renewable Cities, and to take you a little bit on a brief journey on how we got here. Well, I have to go back to Copenhagen. And I went to the Copenhagen conference and I came back, not quite as pessimistic as some, I came back to try and create the equivalent of the Copenhagen Climate Council, a council of business leaders focused on addressing climate change. And I went across the country. I talked to almost 200 public servants, business people, NGOs, and what I learned is they said that they felt kneecapped at Copenhagen and that this was not the time to create another council. Instead, they wanted a place for dialogue. They wanted a place where we could convene difficult conversations about the issues of transitioning to a low-carbon economy. So that's where the idea of Carbon Talks was born. Now, I want to say about the idea. You can always have a great idea, but if you don't have champions, it goes nowhere. I was lucky because I took this idea to Rudy North, and Rudy didn't just champion it, he asked me for a 10-year contract. Now, for those of you who don't know Rudy and Patricia North and their daughter Caroline and their son Rory, they are the forces behind North Growth Foundation, one of the most catalytic foundations in this country. And they, with Ross, have been supporters of what we've been doing. So Carbon Talks. Our goal was to increase Canadian global competitiveness by transitioning to a low-carbon economy. And we did this by looking at those spaces where carbon shifts could happen. We would look predominantly with municipalities, and when they had made a decision to shift to a low-carbon economy and did not have the buy-in, we would support them. What we would do is we would bring people together in small groups. And those people generally were the people that had the power to make the change. And we would have them meet with city staff, and together we would challenge them to come up with the solution to take the target and bring it to reality. So in the context of Carbon Talks, we were also focused on many different cities. We worked on district energy, we worked on transportation. But as we continued working with cities across the country, we also recognized that the severity of climate change was moving quickly, and we had to scale up. And in March 2014, I was invited by our friends at the World Future Council, who are up there, to come and be a part of something called a hearing on 100% renewable energy. And I have to be honest, when I got the invitation, I looked at it and I went, feels a little flaky. It's a bit far-fetched, this idea of being able to transition to 100% renewable energy. But I did go and I did help facilitate, and I came back, and that was a very transformational moment. Not only because I realized that moving and transitioning to renewable energy was possible, it was inevitable. And so then began to look at how could we use the core competencies of Carbon Talks, our dialogue and convening, and support the existing leadership in moving to 100% renewable energy. Well, that was the birth of Renewable Cities. And what we did with Renewable Cities is we went across the world this time and had interviews with over 150 people, asking them how could we support them. And boy, did they teach us. We learned that making this transition isn't easy. There's no easy technical fix. It requires leadership. It requires financing and innovation. It requires recognizing that at the bedrock is energy efficiency. Renewable energy is absolutely critical to our future, but so is energy efficiency. And so that we began to look at how we could support the renewable energy movement. So one of the things we did is we looked at how do we create a space where leaders can come together. People told us that there are a lot of opportunities to listen, but there are not a lot of opportunities to roll up our sleeves and get to work. You told us that you wanted a doing space, a learning space. And so we created the Global Learning Forum. Now, this is not the beginning necessarily of a US or of an SFU initiative. This is the beginning or the gathering of a global movement. And that's an important part of what we're doing. That here in this room are people that have the capacity to create the change. This was co-created and co-designed by many different organizations and partners. And you can see some of them here, and all of these people will be part of our Global Learning Forum. Now, I want to take a moment and talk about the whole nature of dialogue. I'm a trained debater, and I know how to go for the jugular. I listen for the gaps in people's arguments, and I go for it. Dialogue couldn't be more opposite than debate. It's about intently listening. It's about finding solutions. It's really about seeing how we can build on each other's ideas. And the Global Learning Forum is really a platform for dialogue and exchange. So for those of you who are registered and are going to be a part of that, we're asking you to bring your full selves in as participants. We're asking you to play a role, bring your successes, bring your failures to the table, and let's together try and move the dial on renewable energy. Now, one of the journalists that I spoke to asked me about what our results were. Well, already we know that the city of Vancouver has gone to 100% renewable. We know or have made the commitment. In Korea at ICLEI's conference, the creation of a renewable cities network. You being here is part of that. So already we're seeing the collaboration. Ray Kurzweil, one of the people who predicts the future and has been more accurate than anyone else, says we're about 10 years away from being able to go to 100% renewable. 10 years is nothing. And in this room, I think, are the people that are going to create that transition to renewable energy. So I want to welcome you to Renewable Cities, the Global Learning Forum, to SFU, but most of all, I want to welcome you to a new movement, a movement that's inspired by renewal, change, and hope. Thank you.